I crashed on a back road no map remembers and woke up in a town that shouldn't exist. A faint whisper. Welcome to Harvest Week. They said the crops here grow richer than anywhere else, but no one tells you what they feed them. A sudden thump. A shadow shifts in the corn. I tried to escape. I tried to warn someone, but in Dresper's hollow, the soil remembers. Soft whisper. Next year, another will bloom. Part 1. Welcome to Dresper's hollow. I've filmed in dozens of forgotten towns, some dust-blown and dying, others proud and clinging to tradition. But nothing prepared me for Dresper's hollow. It wasn't even supposed to be on my route. I was heading south from Hannibal, following a cold trail about abandoned silos and old settler legends. My GPS cut out somewhere between two cornfields that went on forever. Just endless rows in the dark, the kind of dark that eats your headlights. I must have hit something. A pothole, an animal, I don't know. The car jolted sideways and the front tires sank into the soft shoulder. When I stepped out, the world felt wrong. The silence wasn't empty. It pressed on me, like the night was holding its breath. That's when I saw the lantern, just a small flicker, swaying gently in the corn about 20 feet off the road. Then it moved. Not fast, not threatening, just purposeful. I should have stayed in the car, but curiosity's the real curse of documentarians. I called out, "Hey, you got a phone?" The corn rustled, and a man stepped out. Tall, maybe mid-60s, wore a broad-brimmed hat and an old canvas jacket stained with soil. His eyes looked like they belonged to someone much older. "You're not hurt, are you?" he asked. I told him I was fine, just stranded. He nodded slowly. "Well, reckon the hollow'll take care of you tonight. Name's Elias Greer. Come on, son, let's get you out of the cold." I hesitated. "The hollow, Dresper's hollow," he said, like I should have known. Few miles up. Quiet. Place. We don't mind company, long as it's respectful. I followed him. The corn parted like it had been waiting for us. We walked a winding dirt path, lit only by his lantern. The air smelled heavy, earthy and sweet, like rotting fruit and freshly tilled soil. We crossed an old wooden bridge. Beneath it, the water didn't move. No frogs, no bugs. Just stillness. On the far side, the town rose up like something out of a postcard from the 1950s. Quaint houses, white picket fences, a general store with hand-painted signs. Everything was clean, but old, like it had been preserved in amber. No lights, just lanterns, and no cars in the streets. I asked Elias why no one used electricity. "We like things the way they were," he said. Simple, clean, honest. It sounded rehearsed. He led me to a modest guest house near the town square. Inside was warm, lit with oil lamps. A woman in a floral dress handed me a folded quilt and said, "You're just in time for Harvest Week." Her smile was wide, perfect. But her eyes didn't smile at all. I asked Elias what Harvest Week was. He chuckled. "Tradition. Been doing it since our grandfathers. Ceremony, songs, blessings. You'll see." I wanted to ask more, but he clapped a hand on my shoulder and said I should rest. "Folks'll want to meet you come morning." The guest room was simple. Handmade furniture, lace curtains, a ceramic basin and pitcher of water. The bed creaked like it hadn't been touched in years. I laid there for hours, listening. No cars, no wind, just the occasional soft creak of wood, like the house itself was breathing. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps outside, slow, dragging footsteps on gravel. I looked out the window and saw 4 people walking down the main road in single file. Each held a candle. Each wore what looked like a burlap sack over their head. One of them stopped and stared directly at my window. I swear to God, even from that distance, I could feel their eyes, and then they moved on. I didn't sleep after that. Come morning, the town was alive, but quiet. Children played with wooden toys, men hammered fences, women hung laundry that already looked dry. No one had a phone. No one even asked if I had one. I tried to get a signal. Nothing. Not even emergency service. When I asked if there was a landline I could use, Elias just said, "You'll be fine here." They invited me to breakfast in the town hall. Long wooden tables lined with food that looked too perfect. Eggs with yolks like gold. Sausages that didn't steam but smelled of spice and smoke. Apples the size of softballs. I ate out of politeness. Everything tasted good, but too rich, too ripe. The girl at the far end of the table whispered something to her friend while looking at me. They both giggled, then turned away. Elias clinked his mug. "Neighbours," he said, "we're blessed this year to welcome an outsider to our fold during the sacred days. The land brought him here, as it always brings what we need." Everyone raised a glass. I didn't. Later that day, I walked alone down to the edge of the town where the fields began again. The corn was taller than it should have been for the season. I stepped between the rows just a few feet in and immediately lost sight of the road. The stalks were too close together, like they'd shifted to block me. That's when I heard whispering. Not wind, not rustling. Whispering. I turned, back fast, and in that split second I thought I saw something further in, a figure, tall, thin, watching me. But when I looked again, it was gone. I returned to town. Every smile I saw felt tighter. Every gaze held just a little too long. They all looked at me the same way someone watches a turkey in the days before. Thanksgiving, harvest week. And I was starting to understand I hadn't just stumbled into town, I'd been brought. Part 2. The Fields Grow Red at Night. The next morning in Dresper's Hollow began like the last one ended. Quiet, too quiet. I stepped outside with my camera, hoping to get some daylight shots of the town. Sunlight poured over the crooked rooftops and shimmering fields like it was trying to convince me everything was fine. But even in full daylight, something about the place felt curated, like it was pretending. I walked down the dirt path past the bakery. No signage, no prices, just an old woman sitting behind a wooden table of loaves. When I asked if I could record a quick interview, she smiled and nodded, but every answer she gave felt rehearsed. Dresper's Hollow's been blessed for a long time, dear. The land takes care of us. What do you mean by blessed? I asked. She looked me dead in the eye. Everything grows. Before I could follow up, a young boy came running from behind the store, barefoot and carrying a bundle of corn. He tripped, spilling the husks onto the dirt. I bent down to help him gather them. But when I picked one up, my fingers came away slick and warm. I pulled back the leaves. The kernels were deep red, not just colored, wet, oozing, thick and glistening like fresh blood. The boy snatched it from my hand and looked around like he'd done something wrong. Then he whispered, "That one's not for eating." I asked where he got it, but he just pointed toward the old barn at the edge of the fields and ran off. I followed the path. The barn was warped, black with age, and sagging at the corners. Vines clung to its sides like veins. Inside, it was dark. The light filtered through slats in razor-thin beams. Dozens, maybe hundreds of ears of corn were hung from the rafters like trophies, and each one bled, not fast, just a slow, constant drip, into buckets. I filmed everything. My hands were shaking, but I kept the lens steady. In one of the back corners, I found something worse, a pile of scarecrows. Not displayed, discarded, all slumped in a heap. Some were missing limbs. One had nails driven into the face where the eyes would have been. I turned to leave. The door was closed. I hadn't closed it. Outside, the sun was lower than I remembered. The air felt thicker. A low hum seemed to come from the corn itself, like 1,000 voices whispering at once, too quiet to understand. I left the barn fast. Back in town, no one looked surprised to see me return, but the stares lingered longer, now. Less curious, more observant. At the general store, I tried asking questions. Is the corn always that color? Do you always bleed it? No one answered, just smiles, smiles and nods, like mannequins taught how to be polite but not how to feel. I found the boy again. Sammy, he said his name was. Maybe 8, 9 years old. He sat alone on the porch of a shuttered house, drawing on scraps of old paper with a burnt stick. I asked what he was making. He held it up. A figure, all black, with limbs that bent the wrong way. No face, just a red hole where the mouth should be. And below it, cornfields, all drawn in tight, jagged lines. That's the man under the field, Sammy said. He sleeps till we feed him. I asked what they fed him. Sammy didn't answer. Instead, he drew a small stick figure beside the creature. Then he looked up at me and whispered, "You're too tall to hide in the rows." I left. That evening, I returned to the guest house. I watched the footage I'd taken. In one of the frames, just behind the barn, something moved, not clearly, just a blur in the stalks. A long shadow shifting between rows, too tall to be a person, too thin. When Elias came by to deliver supper, I asked him directly, "What is the man under the field?" His face changed. The easy smile vanished. His shoulders tensed. He set the tray down harder than necessary and said, "You'd do best not to repeat what the children say." I pushed further. I saw the corn. I saw the scarecrows. "Something's wrong here, Elias." He turned to face me fully. And when he spoke, it was like a different voice came out. City folk always think they understand things just because they can point a camera at it. But some things aren't meant to be understood. They're meant to be respected. He left without saying goodnight. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house made too much noise, creaks, groans, the thump of something soft dragging across the porch. Around midnight, I stepped outside with my camera and scanned the horizon. Then, I saw them. Out past the edge of town, deep in the fields, torches began to light. One by one, they flickered on. First 5, then 10, then dozens. Moving slowly through the corn, weaving paths I couldn't map. Not aimless, not random. Like they were tracing a shape I couldn't see from where I stood. Some of the figures wore masks. Others were shirtless, backs slick with something dark that caught the firelight. They didn't chant, didn't speak, just moved. I zoomed in. One figure stopped and turned. Even at that distance, I could see it watching me. Not the camera, me. The torchlight danced in its eyes, and then all the torches went out at once. I ran inside, locked every door, and waited for the whispers to start again, because they always do. Every night, the fields speak, and now I think they've started saying my name. Part 3, The Chosen and the Soil. There's a tree near the edge of Dresper's Hollow that looks more dead than alive. I found it by accident, chasing a strange sound, like low humming coming from beneath the earth. The tree's trunk was split wide open, like it had been struck by lightning 100 years ago, and no one bothered to clear it. Black bark peeling like old scabs, roots knotted like fists, and in the hollow where the trunk had split, something was tucked inside. A bundle of cloth, mold-stained, rotten. Inside was a journal, water-damaged, the spine warped. The cover had once been red, now just a faded smear. The first page was torn, in half, but I could just make out the name written in smeared ink, Miriam Bell. The entries began normally, weather, chores, something about harvest prep. But then, as I flipped deeper, the tone changed. Her handwriting grew frantic, desperate, and the dates, the last one was from 1971. They say I'm chosen for the soil, that the land picked me. I didn't hear it. I didn't want it. But they said the signs were clear. My blood runs hot, they said. My shadow's too long. My dreams go too deep. Mama cried but wouldn't fight them. Daddy turned his face away. I begged the ground to spit me out. I buried bones and hoped it would take them instead. It didn't work. They say, I'll feel the hunger before it takes me. They say he doesn't chew, he drinks. I sat under that tree and read for over an hour. The words crawled under my skin. Every page dragged me deeper into something I didn't want to understand. The silo opens once a season, always at equinox. They lower us in like offerings. The air down there hums. It smells like wet copper and sweet milk. The last girl screamed for hours. They said it meant the corn would be good. I turned off my camera. This wasn't for footage. This was survival now. I took the journal back to my room, wrapped it in a towel to stop the stink. I tried to sleep but couldn't. My ears rang. The silence wasn't silent anymore. It throbbed. Around midnight, I looked out the window and saw Elias standing in the middle of the square, just standing there, staring straight up at my window, not moving, not blinking. He stayed there for over an hour. I didn't move. I just watched, and every so often, he'd tilt his head, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. When the sun finally rose, he was gone. I walked the town in daylight, trying to match names in the journal to faces. Old families, bloodlines, the same names kept showing up. Greer, Holloway, Pike. Most of them still lived here, still part of it. The town trades life for bounty. That's what Miriam wrote. And now it made sense. The perfect harvests, the unnatural corn, the blood, the whispers, the torches in the night. They weren't praying. They were preparing. I walked out to the silo after breakfast. No one followed me, but I could feel eyes. The air around it was cold, even in daylight. Tall, rusted, split down one side like a wound. The ground near the base was dark and soft. Not mud, not ash. Something richer, something that stank of old iron and decay. I climbed part way up the rusted ladder. The hatch at the top was sealed with a lock thick with years of rust, but fresh. Scratch marks covered the rim, not animal, not weather. Fingers. Something had clawed to get out. I almost vomited. Back in town, I found the child again, Sammy. He sat in the same spot on the porch, drawing again. More pictures. This time, the figure was holding hands with a little girl. Beneath them, the earth was split open like a jaw. I asked, "Is that Miriam?" He nodded. "She didn't feed him right," he said. So the next year, they gave him more. I asked how many. Sammy held up 4 fingers, then added 1 more. I took the journal to the church. It was empty, dusty. Crosses on the wall, but none of them felt holy. I sat in the back pew and tried to piece it all together. Every equinox, they choose someone. They say the land tells them. A dream, a mark, a sound. And that person, whoever it is, they're fed to whatever lies beneath that silo. In return, the fields overflow. No pests, no drought, even winter's kinder. I looked through the last few pages of Miriam's journal. The handwriting was barely legible. I saw him in the dirt. I saw his teeth. He smiles through the roots. They put the song in my mouth. Said it would keep me from screaming, but I screamed anyway. He didn't chew. He drank. And he remembers. He remembers. The last page was blank except for 1 line. The soil knows who runs. I slammed the book shut and ran back to the guest house. I started packing. Camera, laptop, batteries, everything. But the car was still busted. My phone's still dead. And the road. I walked it. 5 miles out, it looped. It took me back to town. Same path, same barn, same rotted sign hanging from the post. Dresper's Hollow. Population. Enough. I've been chosen. I don't know how I know it, but I do. The way they look at me. The way they stop talking when I pass. The way Elias smiled this morning and said, "The land's ready, and the equinox is tomorrow." Part 4. You can't leave Dresper's Hollow. I woke up before dawn, heart racing like I'd been running in my sleep. The journal lay open on the floor beside my bed. I don't remember opening it. I don't remember reading it again. But my hands were stained with dirt. Fresh. Under my nails. On the sheets. I didn't wait. I grabbed my bag, my camera, and the car keys. I didn't even bother packing the rest. I just needed out. And there it was. The car. Perfect. Fixed. No dent. No smoke. Just waiting, like someone had known I'd need it. I didn't ask questions. I didn't look for Elias. I jumped in, turned the key, and it started. First time. I floored. It down the main road, past the fields, past the church, past the crooked barn that still stank of iron and mold. The sun hadn't yet risen, but the sky was pink, like it was bleeding just beneath the clouds. I reached the edge of town. The old iron signpost came into view. Dresper's Hollow. Population. Enough. I passed it, and the car died. Not sputtered, just off, all at once. I tried again. Nothing. Tried again. Silence. The birds circled above me. The same three, I swear. One with a torn wing. One with a white stripe on its head. The same pattern I'd seen the day before. And the day before that, I got out and walked. I passed trees. Then more trees. Then the signpost. Again. Dresper's Hollow. Population. Enough. I was back. I hadn't turned. I hadn't turned around. I walked faster this time. Eyes locked on the path. No distractions. 10 minutes. 20. I felt the wind change direction. Then I heard it. A whisper. No. Not from behind me. From the phone in my pocket. I hadn't turned it on. It had been dead for days. I pulled it out, and the screen glowed. No signal, but a call was in progress. No number, just a voice. The soil remembers. Over and over again, the soil remembers. I threw it. It still whispered. The whisper grew louder as I walked. It followed me. It clung to me. Every footstep echoed like I was being buried 1 inch at a time. I turned to run, and Elias was standing in the road, calm, smiling, like he always does. "You gave it a good try," he said, like a father gently scolding a child. But the hollow doesn't let go easy, especially not when it's chosen. I asked him what that meant. He just said, "Come on, you'll feel better after some tea." I didn't go with him, not at first. I stood my ground. But when I looked behind me, the trees had changed. The road was gone. Only corn and fog, and the distant groan of something turning in the soil. I followed him, back through town. This time, no one looked away. They stared. Every face, every window, a girl brushing her doll's hair, a man rocking in a chair, eyes wide and watering. A dog that didn't bark, just sat and watched me with its head tilted and mouth open like it was smiling too. I shut myself in the guest house and locked the door. Then the knock came. Soft. 3 times. I didn't answer. Under the door slid a note, no name, just 5 words. "Don't fight. It's worse." I didn't sleep. Couldn't. My reflection in the mirror blinked out of sync. My voice in the recording slowed down, warped, even when played at normal speed. In one clip I didn't remember filming. I was standing in the corn, whispering something over and over. I turned the volume all the way up and played it backward. He drinks. He drinks. He drinks. I lost time after that. I remember the light outside turning blue, like twilight, but it was only noon. I remember going for a walk and finding myself in a place I hadn't seen before, a clearing deep in the cornfields. The stalks pressed down in a perfect circle, ropes coiled on the ground, candles, half burnt, bones, bleached white, and at the center, an altar, a slab of stone so old the moss had grown in its cracks like veins. My name was etched into it, not just scratched, carved deep, precise, Daniel Price. My full name. It hadn't been spoken aloud since I arrived. Not once. I touched the stone. It was warm. Wet. I pulled my hand away and found red smeared across my fingers. From the earth? From the stone? Or from me? I turned to leave and saw someone step out from the corn. A figure in a sackcloth mask. Then another. And another. No words. Just watching. Their masks were stitched with symbols. Roots, teeth, open mouths. I ran. They didn't follow. They didn't need to. Because the ritual wasn't for them. It was about me. I don't know how long I've been in this room now. The sun hasn't risen. Or maybe it rose and set without me noticing. The door's locked, but I hear footsteps outside, constant, measured, like someone pacing, waiting. The journal's gone. Only a single page remains, nailed to the inside of my door. The soil remembers, and now it dreams through you. I don't know if I'm awake anymore. I don't know if this is real, but I know this. They're coming, and when they do, I think I'll walk with them, because I don't think I can fight it anymore. Part 5. The midnight harvest begins. It started with a bell, not a real one, at least not anything I could see. It echoed low, like it was buried beneath the town. Faint at first, then rising, vibrating the windows, rattling the floorboards under my feet. Every breath I took after that tasted like dust and iron. I didn't have time to run. They came for me without a sound. 5 figures, all masked. Burlap sacks pulled tight over their heads, stitched crudely with dried vines and animal bone. One mask had teeth, real ones, human. Another had hollow eyes painted on, so wide they took up the whole face. They didn't speak, not a word. They moved like they weren't fully human, like their joints were too loose, too old. I tried to fight. God, I tried. But my limbs went heavy the moment their hands touched me. Not paralyzed, just resigned. Like my body remembered something I didn't. They dragged me through the fields, the corn parting like it had been waiting for us. The stalks scraped my arms and cheeks, cutting thin red lines that burned as soon as they opened. Above, the moon hung low, bloated and amber, like it was watching through a veil of smoke. I saw others ahead, dozens, all dressed in the same ritual, garb, burlap, bone, vines wound like veins. Some of them wore antlers. Some carried lanterns filled with swarming moths instead of flame. They formed a circle around the silo, the ancient, rust-eaten silo that loomed against the moon like a hungry mouth. In the center stood an altar, not the one I saw before. This one was older, taller, covered in dried blood and ash. Its surface cracked like old skin. And then, she came forward, Agnes Holloway, the oldest resident of Dresper's Hollow. I'd seen her once before, barely, mobile, wrapped in blankets, staring out a window like her soul had already left. But now, she walked without assistance. No cane, no trembling. And when she spoke, her voice didn't belong to anything alive. It rustled like dry leaves scraped across pavement. It buzzed like a fly caught inside a throat. Her language wasn't English. I don't know what it was. Words bent backwards, chanted, spoken from deep in her chest like she was coughing up curses older than memory. The crowd repeated every line in perfect unison. They began to sway. Some dropped to their knees. Some clutched the dirt and moaned as if it were feeding on their hands. And then Agnes lifted her arms, and the ground opened. No tricks, no theatrics. The earth split, right at the base of the silo. The dirt cracked like it had lips, peeled back like skin, revealing a pit so dark it looked deeper than the sky. But it wasn't empty. It breathed. I felt it. A slow inhale, a pull, like the air was being sucked from the world. Then a stench hit me, so foul I couldn't even gag, like wet fur, rotted milk, and something far older, something that had been stewing for centuries. The crowd wept. Some of them began to chant louder. One began to laugh, high and shrill, until it broke into sobs. And then they turned to me, dragged me forward, to the edge of the pit. I tried to dig in my heels, tried to scream, but nothing worked. My voice wouldn't leave my throat. My legs had no strength. I was a puppet, and the strings were buried in the soil. Agnes stepped toward me, her face now visible. Her skin hung in folds. Her eyes were cloudy, but her mouth, it stretched wide in an unnatural grin. Teeth too long, too many. She pressed her palm to my forehead, whispered something I didn't understand, and the pit responded. A sound rose from the darkness. A groan, but not human, not animal. It was hollow, like a massive breath being drawn through a tunnel filled with teeth. The cornfields trembled, the earth twitched, and I saw it. Something moved beneath the soil. Something huge. I couldn't see its shape, only the suggestion of limbs, long and slow, dragging through the muck, roots twisted unnaturally, bending away from it like they were afraid. And then a hand. No, not a hand. Something like a hand, rising from the pit. Fingers as long as fence posts, skin the color of old bark, slick with blood and earth. The nails were black, split, and curling inward. It reached up, not toward me, but toward the sky, like it was waking up. The chanting reached a fever pitch. People tore at their own clothing. Some collapsed, overwhelmed. A woman threw herself into the dirt, screaming for forgiveness. A man danced with his hands full of fire. I stood paralyzed, just watching, and the man under the field kept rising. I don't know how tall he is. I don't think he ever fully emerged. But what I saw, what I felt, was enough to tell me one thing. He wasn't just a god, he was ours. Built from our dead, fed with our memories, watered with everything we forgot. And now he was hungry again. And I was the offering. The final whisper I heard that night didn't come from Agnes. It came from the soil itself, right beneath my feet. We remember the blood. We remember the name. And now, we drink. Part 6. Flesh for fertility. I ran. I don't remember deciding to run. My legs just moved. Somewhere between the pit opening and that thing. Beginning to rise, the grip on me loosened. Maybe the town thought I'd already accepted my fate. Maybe the hollow was just playing with its food. But I ran. Through the fields. The corn, now taller than it was hours ago, slapped against my face and shoulders, cutting like blades. The air was thicker, warmer, breathing. It wasn't night anymore, but it wasn't morning either. The sky had turned the color of old bruises. Behind me, the ritual roared. Voices in tongues no one should speak. Flames flared high. The ground groaned. The earth twisted beneath my feet, rippling like water. Like something enormous was just beneath, the surface shifting in its slumber. I stumbled, fell to my knees, and the soil opened. Hands, dozens of them, erupted from the dirt, pale, thin, impossibly long. Some looked human, others didn't. Fingers curled around my ankles, my calves, pulling, clawing. I screamed, kicking, digging my fingers into the ground to hold on. Faces began to form in the dirt. Not fully, just impressions, as if the land remembered every soul it had swallowed. Eyes bulging in terror, mouths open mid-scream. I fought harder and broke free. I don't know how. Maybe it let me go. Maybe it wanted to see what I'd do next. I crashed through the rows, blood trailing behind me, lungs burning. That's when I saw him. Elias, standing at the edge of the ritual circle, still calm, still composed, but in his arms, a child, a baby, swaddled in cloth, crying softly. He looked at me and nodded. Not a greeting. Confirmation this was the sacrifice now, not me. Him, a child, the town would survive. The fields would flourish. Balance would be kept. All they needed was one. The crowd began to chant again, slowly this time, softly, like a lullaby made of rot and ruin. I stepped forward. My body ached, my mind fractured. But in that moment, I knew I couldn't let it be him, not that child, not for them, so I made a choice. Before Elias could move, I broke into a sprint, faster than I'd ever moved in my life. He shouted, not words, just a sound, pure shock. I slammed into him, knocking the baby free. A woman caught the child before it hit the ground, thank God. And then I ran, not away, toward the pit. I could see it now, open wide, pulsing, hungry, and I dove. I dived into the mouth of the hollow, fell through layers of heat and root and bone. And the last thing I saw before darkness took me was the town, smiling, every one of them, smiling, as if I'd done exactly what they'd hoped for, as if they knew. I didn't hit the bottom. There was no bottom, just warmth, wet, soil that wrapped around me like a womb. I heard the breathing again, slower now, satisfied, and then silence. The dawn came gently. Birdsong returned. The wind whispered. The cornfields swayed lush and green. Taller than ever, the townsfolk gathered with baskets, smiling, laughing, harvesting, their hands red up to the wrists. And beneath one tree, half buried in the dirt, the camera I once carried blinked a soft red light. Still recording, still capturing. The final shot? Soil, then a shadow crossing the lens, a breath and a whisper. Next year, another will bloom. Thank you for joining me on this dark journey into Dresper's Hollow. The harvest has ended, but the secrets, they're only just beginning to stir. If you want to uncover more forgotten towns, lost souls, and chilling legends, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what's lurking just beyond the next story. Like this video, if the shadows kept you up tonight, share it with someone brave enough to watch and tell me in the comments, what would you do if the soil remembered you? Stay safe out there, because here, in the dark, every secret has a price. Until next time, this is Haunted Echoes, where the echoes never truly fade.